One of the problems with primary teaching is that you are expected to be a jack of all trades. As you are aware, this is quite unrealistic. Very few people are equally good at music and English and science and art and maths and PE. Increasingly, specialist teachers are being employed in primary schools. The argument against moving completely in this direction is the pastoral needs of younger students. The relationship a student develops with a single teacher can be valuable. The routine of moving from room to room, or indeed of teaching style, can be problematic for younger students. The ideal situation is a school where teachers' special interests and passions can be complemented by the skills of their colleagues. Partial use of special teachers can be beneficial. As a teacher, if you love teaching maths, then teach it. If art is your thing, go for it. Children will be motivated by teachers who are passionate about what they are doing. This doesn't negate the need for primary teachers to be solid in a range of areas, but it does try to acknowledge the simple fact that no one is good at everything.
Most students at some point of their high school education will be faced with a choice of studying history or geography. For my part, I firmly believe they should both be compulsory. Given this is often not realistic, how do we best guide students in their choice? The guiding tenet should be what the student is interested in. Students' natural leanings seem so often these days to be overlooked. For goodness sake, let them do what they want to do, not what they think will lead them to future economic success or what their parents think they should study. If they aren't sure, talk to them about their strengths and interests. History will clearly involve more essay writing, which may be limiting for some students. Geography, on the other hand, calls for practical skills, field work, and a different style of writing. Encourage students to talk to older students about their experiences and if they were happy with the choices they made. Looking at the type of assessment tasks given for the various courses could also provide the uncertain student with a little more idea about what to expect.
My research was conducted to consider teacher attitudes towards the implementation of national testing of students in literacy and numeracy in years 3, 5, 7, and 9. The research was qualitative in nature and involved interviewing classroom teachers in the field post during the first and second administration of national testing. One of the objectives of the research was to see if there was a nexus between teacher attitudes and students' performance scores. The research found that student scores were correlated with teacher attitudes. There was a greater link between students' prior achievements, school economic resources, and students' socioeconomic backgrounds, with the final of these having the most sizable impact on student performance. I anticipate that the research team will reconduct this work again during the next testing cycle to confirm these findings.
In today's session, I'd like to start out with a brief overview of developments since the birth of the skyscraper. Builders and engineers have continuously looked for ways to improve building methods and materials in order to make structures, these new structures, stronger, taller and lighter. Skyscrapers are and must be built to last. So they must be made of materials that are strong, durable, resistant to the sun, wind, rain, frost and snow, and affordable. Concrete is one of the most common materials beyond the steel supports because it's enormously versatile. Its composition can be changed depending on the needs of the building. It can be reinforced, making it stiffer. What I mean is stronger, by setting steel mesh or bars into the concrete. And additives can make it set or harden faster or slower depending on the needs of the design. And this will be a key concern that you guys will ultimately spend a lot of time in your careers thinking about, really grappling with this idea. Another very important material is glass, an important material in all this because the steel skeleton now supports the main loads of the building. The outer skin only serves to keep the weather out and let light in. The more light, the better. So glass walls became very popular beginning after World War II because they are weatherproof while providing ample natural light, and also because they are so much lighter and cheaper than masonry or concrete.
Let's talk for a moment about the job of the catalytic converters. In a nutshell, their job is to convert harmful pollutants into less harmful pollutants, emissions, before they ever leave the car's exhaust system. They are still most commonly used in motor vehicle exhaust systems, but you'll also find them on generator sets, forklifts, mining equipment, trucks, buses, trains and other engine-equipped machines. A catalytic converter provides an environment for a chemical reaction where toxic combustion byproducts are converted to less toxic substances. Catcons are now fitted to both petrol and diesel engines, and I must say they do a good job, as long as they are clean and not clogged up with carbon and other deposits from the engine.
Thanks for making the time to come and see me. As you know, there are a couple of things I think we need to discuss about your progress in the course.
Yes, I know. I'm glad you could make the time.
Not a problem. It's really part of my job to make sure everyone enrolled in the course is getting as much out of it as they can. If we just look at this spreadsheet which outlines your assessment results so far, you can see that while your grades were initially fine, certainly in the average for the year group as a whole, towards the end of semester 1, they've started to drop off a bit.
Yes, I see. I must admit that I had to take a fortnight off just after mid-semester break, and I really felt that the work I missed in those 2 lab sessions have made it really hard for me to understand some of the underlying material required for the rest of the course.
Well, thanks for being so honest, Angelina. I think we're going to have to think about putting some strategies in place, so that by the end of year assessments you're going to have a fair chance of passing.
Well, yeah, thanks, Professor Smith. I couldn't agree more, but I must admit I'm at the point where I don't really know where to start to get on top of this.
As I was saying, Professor Mitchell...
Oh, please call me Lisa.
Yes, well, Lisa... Well, I'm still trying to get my head around the choice of electives for the optional part of the third-year program. I was thinking of taking personal taxation law and company tax, together with the extra 5-credit point course on goods and services and VAT-type taxes, but I'm a bit concerned that I'm going to pigeonhole myself too early in the course.
Yeah,
As you know, there are going to be interviews for summer clerkships coming up, and I really don't want to come across as too focused on certain areas that a lot of firms don't even do, have a practice in.
Well, don't forget, only about 25% of the course at this stage is elective-based, and you'll still have that core of subjects: crim, legal institutions, evidence, property law, general commercial and Fed Con law, all of which would be of interest to a lot of firms. So if I were you, which I'm not, I'd really just go with what my interests are and enjoy the chance to undertake some work in an area that I'm motivated to pursue, don't you think? There's an awful lot of time in this profession where you'll be undertaking long, stressful hours on projects that don't really interest you as much.
The question, why do students achieve so much with one teacher and so little under the guidance of another teacher, is often asked. I believe, as a result of having done research in this area for some time, developing good classroom management is a determining factor. Respect is paramount. Students need to feel respected and, in turn, need to develop respect for the teacher. I've spoken to kids who delight in mucking up in class, and I've talked to their teachers. A common non-verbal cue they both tend to give is rolling their eyes. "Oh, that class," the teacher recoils. "Oh, him," the student groans. What's clear here is a lack of respect. And don't start to think as a teacher you'll be able to fake it. Students are quick to smell a rat. Teachers who are not able to respect their students are in the wrong game.
I'd like to begin today by welcoming you all to Physics 101. I apologize if you feel the lecture theatre is overcrowded today. By looking at the person sitting on your left and then at the person seated on your right, I can offer you some reassurance. By the end of this term, only a third of you will still be here. Yes, the dropout rate is high, and only the most perseverant of you will remain. Please don't let my honesty dissuade you. Those of you who do remain with me to the bitter end, I assure you will have some fun along the way. When you think about what characterizes a good assessment task, the question you really need to ask yourself is, what characterizes good teaching? Good teaching should enable students to show just what they are capable of. In so doing, it must be motivating, interesting to the students, and it should be inclusive to all. Equally, a good assessment needs to be clear and unambiguous, and as interesting as possible for the range of people for whom the task is designed. It needs also to be inclusive. Well, here I mean so that the test takers are able to give a good representation of their true ability. Use this question to keep going back to it, to keep, checking that the questions you are asking actually make sense and mean something to you and to the students themselves.
The exam, which is next Friday, is made up of 4 sections, which I think I've mentioned a couple of times already in this course. OK, so there are 20 multiple-choice questions, 10 short-answer questions, an extended response task, you choose one topic from 4 possibilities, and finally a practical task. For each of the first 3 sections, I'm allocating 60 minutes. You then hand in your paper, move to the lab and begin the practical task. I'm allowing a 10-minute break before you start getting underway with the practical task. I've allocated just 30 minutes to this.
As Asian culture becomes more popular in the United States, the ancient Chinese method of creating a harmonious environment, feng shui, is also gaining ground. Feng shui literally means wind and water. Its roots are 5,000 years old. Feng shui seeks to promote prosperity, good health, and general well-being by examining how energy, qi, flows through a particular room, house, building, or garden. Feng shui considers yin, feminine and passive energy, and yang, which is masculine and hot. It also looks at the 5 elements: water, fire, wood, metal, and earth, and the external environment. The points on the compass, with 8 separate directions, north, northeast, east, southeast, south, southwest, west, and northwest, are also in.
Most of the information we have about Atlantis comes from the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. He says that Atlantis lay west of the Pillars of Hercules rock formations at the Straits of Gibraltar in the Atlantic Ocean. On this huge island was a great and wonderful empire, where brave, virtuous people lived in a kind of paradise. But this peaceful existence came to an end when the people of Atlantis began to love power more than they loved the gods. They waged war against the rest of the world, but were ultimately defeated by the wise and moral Athenians. Then, some 9,000 years before Plato's own time, or around 9,500 years before the Common Era, earthquakes sunk Atlantis into the sea. There is no proof that Atlantis ever existed. Many people believe that Atlantis was just a legend, told by Plato to praise the values Athenian society held dear. But others believe that the storied island was
Initially, when Lewis turned to writing children's books, his publisher and some of his friends tried to dissuade him. They thought it would hurt his reputation as a writer of serious works. Tolkien in particular criticized Lewis' first Narnia book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. He thought that there were too many elements that clashed. A Father Christmas and an evil witch talking to animals and children. Thankfully, Lewis didn't listen to any of them. Following the publication of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe in 1950, Lewis quickly wrote 6 more Narnia books, publishing the final one, The Last Battle, in 1956. Although they were not well received at first by critics and reviewers, the books gained in popularity through word of mouth. The Narnia books have since sold more than 100 million copies and are among the
The UN Charter comprises a preamble and 19 chapters divided into 111 articles. The Charter sets forth the purposes of the United Nations as the maintenance of international peace and security, the development of friendly relations between states, and the achievement of cooperation in solving international economic, social, cultural, and humanitarian problems. It expresses a strong hope for the equality of all people and the expansion of basic freedoms. The principal organs of the United Nations, as specified in the Charter, are the General Assembly, the Security Council, the Economic and Social Council, the Trusteeship Council, the International Court of Justice, and the Secretariat.
French, on the other hand, is a highly centralised language. with the Parisian accent setting the standard for the world. If other French-speaking political entities had risen to rival France, the situation might be different. If, for instance, Quebec had remained a separate country, or if Haiti had been a larger country, then perhaps other French dialects might have become more accepted.
By way of introduction, Joseph Heller, the author who introduced the phrase catch-22 into the English language, died on December 12th at the age of 76 in his home in East Hampton, New York. In 1961, Heller published his first novel, Catch-22, a surreal anti-war story set in World War II. Heller's protagonist, a fighter pilot, comes to understand that a man deemed insane by the military bureaucracy may be released from duty. The catch-22 of Heller's title is that when a man recognizes his condition, he is no longer insane. Heller spoke at numerous college campuses throughout the 60s, and Catch-22 seemed to capture the anti-war sentiment of many protesters during the Vietnam War.
There was little available evidence to contradict his viewpoint.
Three of the students were confused by the key hypothesis.
Before completing the exercise, you need to read the remaining chapters.
In today's session, I'd like to start out with a brief overview of developments since the birth of the skyscraper. Builders and engineers have continuously looked for ways to improve building methods and materials in order to make these new structures, stronger, taller and lighter. Skyscrapers are and must be built to last, so they must be made of materials that are strong, durable, resistant to the sun, wind, rain, frost and snow, and affordable. Concrete is one of the most common materials beyond the steel supports because it's enormously versatile. Its composition can be changed depending on the needs of the building. It can be reinforced, making it stiffer. What I mean is stronger by setting steel mesh or bars into the concrete. And additives can make it set or harden faster or slower depending on the needs of the design. And this will be a key concern that you guys will ultimately spend a lot of time in your careers thinking about, really grappling with this idea. Another very important material is glass, an important material in all this because the steel skeleton now supports the main loads of the building. The outer skin only serves to keep the weather out and let light in. The more light, the better. So glass walls became very popular beginning after World War II because they are weatherproof while providing ample natural light, and also because they are so much lighter and cheaper than masonry or concrete.